I used up too much time. So agenda real quick is, I'm going to intro. That's what I'm doing now. I'm really happy to have Jeff Kalberg with us. And if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Jeff or watching one of his webinars, the guy is just absolutely brilliant. He's been with the company for a long time. He was just promoted to what, principal engineer, is this right? Or what's the complete title, Jeff?
Like I said, it was Principal Technology Evangelist.
I love it. I love it. So, and there's nobody that's at the company that knows more about IGEL technology than Jeff. And he's going to come in and talk about a bit about Microsoft and IGEL, and then woo you with a bunch of other stuff that blew my mind when I saw the PowerPoint. And then we have another really brilliant guy it's the second time on the meetup with us, Christian Bermudez, and he's from our advanced services group. He's one of the geniuses we fly in to solve problems and build cool stuff. And he brought a friend of his in James Meador. Am I saying that right?
James Meador.
Meador, and he's from Nuance, and they're going to talk a bit about basically dictation and how to really make this stuff work. So I'm really excited to have Christian back on. His first session was just absolutely stellar. So can you outdo this one? Can you outdo the first one, Christian?
It'll be pretty interesting, but it should be close.
Yeah, it should be okay. We do have upcoming events. Like I said, these are monthly events. So this one is our October event, or this one is a September event. I'm glad I'm not doing sessions. I don't know what month it is. So we have in next month, I'm really looking forward to it. We only have an hour for that one, maybe a little bit longer. We'll stick around until all the questions are done, but we're going to do Q&A with our CTO, Matthias Haas. And this is sort of an ask anything type of session. So please come ready with your questions. We'll ask in advance within the IGEL community too. If you have any suggestions, so we'll have some stage for him based on what you guys said. And Matthias is the one that's responsible for the future of IGEL OS, UMS, of IGEL software, right? So this will be really great. If you've ever wanted to know anything about anything, or just share your views, you want to attend this one and let Matthias know. November, we think we're going to have, we're definitely going to have some Citrix related content and how IGEL works with Citrix and how to troubleshoot and optimize and all that stuff. So we're going to bring in another ringer for that. For resources, please, if you're not already an IGEL community member, please join. We have a great community. It's one of the best in the industry because we have the best folks in the industry. And so go to join.igelcommunity.com. Also, we have a website, igelcommunity.com, which has a bunch of good training resources, getting started guides, all the recorded videos, a bunch of neat stuff. So visit that thing too. And last but not least, to sign up for future events, go over to the events and you can click the link, or just join the IGEL community because we post everything in the IGEL community and we'll remind you that it's, that things are coming up. In 5 minutes, we start. So on that note, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And I've never been more happy. Well, I have been more happy, but this is as close to as happy as I can be to bring on Jeff Kalberg, and I can't wait to watch this one myself. So Jeff, are you ready?
I think so. Can you see my screen, Doug?
Yeah, you bet. And the last thing is, please feel free to ask questions. You'll see the Q&A little button down in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please use that to ask the questions. And of course, chat, feel free to chat. If you like it, say, yeah, we love this. This is great. Do that within chat. But for questions, don't put them in chat, please. We'll miss them. Put them in the Q&A. And let's have some fun with Jeff. Let's see if we can stump him. I don't think it's possible. So Jeff, the floor is yours, my friend.
Oh, Doug, it's I'm easily stumped. I'm technology. There's been so much technology in my career. It's just hard to it's so hard to keep up. There's so many things to know. So anyway, which is kind of a good segue into how we got here, and I kind of like to start with this little story here about this date, August 12th, 1981. And if I was sitting in a room with you, I'd ask you to raise your hands and say who remembers this date and what happened. I had used these next few slides probably 20 times around in North America and in Europe, and I've only had one person raise their hand. So, but it was a very significant day because that was the day that a little company called IBM, okay, validated the personal computer. You know, the personal computer as we know it has been around for about 10 years, going back in the early 70s, and a lot of hobbyists and stuff were building machines. But, you know, here's a company, IBM, who had almost 65% market share. I mean, they dwarfed everybody else in the industry. It was probably the only company that could sit there and take this idea that it ultimately become more of a consumer item with Apple, and to turn it into something, you know, that was useful for business. And IBM had really kind of set the world on its edge. So DEC couldn't have done it. HP couldn't have done it. All the companies at the time, Wang, GE, NCR, none of these companies, only IBM could validate the personal computer. So we fast forward a few years and we come up to September 30th, 2019. And what was significant about this day, some of us remember that was the day that the industry leader validated running Windows in the cloud. And, you know, all these years prior to when Microsoft announced at Ignite in 2018 that they were going to introduce this product called Windows Virtual Desktop, and that you would run Windows in the cloud. I mean, this is something that Citrix and VMware and all these companies in the industry have been trying to run Windows in the data center, and we always had to come up with all these workarounds. Well, now the company that owns the operating system says, hey, run it, we can run it in the cloud. So again, the only company could validate this. And when we look back at this 20 years from now, and we see how the world has changed because of this significant date, okay? We fast forward a few months later to January 25th of this year, which was when we had our Disrupt conference in Nashville, when we announced the general availability of our partnership with Microsoft, and the fact that we released the first RD client for connecting to Windows Virtual Desktop on Linux. And this was kind of significant, you know. 2 years earlier, we started, Microsoft reached out to IGEL. We started this conversation about, you know, they wanted to create a client for Linux, and they looked at the industry players, and Microsoft felt that IGEL was the best partner to develop a client, a Windows Virtual Desktop client for Linux. We entered into this partnership, and we GA'd that product earlier this year. I think that was one of the last times that anybody was allowed to travel anywhere. So here we have it today. So kind of fast forwarding a little bit more, I thought it might be appropriate for the people here who've been around for a while to understand the history of RDP on IGEL. And there was a product at one point in time which we called IGEL RDP. It was based on an early version of free RDP. Free RDP had a lot of features that were missing, and we weren't able to connect to terminal services at the time and take advantage of all the features that were there. There was a company called Finsoft, okay, who had a licensed version, okay, of an RDP client that they called WinConnect. And this is kind of, in some respects, the IGEL legacy. The Finsoft legacy in IGEL. So if you dig down into the IGEL registry and you go down into the sessions area, you'll see reference to WinConnect. WinConnect was first put in IGEL Linux when we released IGEL Linux 3. So that'll be like 2003 timeframe that we put WinConnect in IGEL OS. And we ran it there into IGEL Linux 4. Okay, before FreeRDP had come along to the point where it made sense to no longer provide WinConnect. And we released IGEL RDP 2. So this was now a new version of IGEL RDP based on FreeRDP, and it's been there since IGEL Linux 4, and it still exists today. So when you go into the IGEL configuration, and we'll see a little reference to it, but when you make an RDP connection and not a WVD connection, you'll be using IGEL RDP 2. Fast forwarding here to what we released back in January, and that would have been what we call IGEL RDP 3. That's the name of the application or the executable on the IGEL device, okay? This is a little different. It is not based on FreeRDP. It was developed in conjunction with Microsoft jointly. They were building RD Core. We were building the Linux client itself. So what we have in IGEL today, in IGEL OS 11, and what is necessary for connecting to Windows Virtual Desktop is the client, or the IGEL RDP3 client that IGEL has put together and built on the RD Core for Linux SDK that Microsoft provides. Along the way, this has really been kind of a joint effort because we've provided we've guided, I suppose, or we've suggested certain features that Microsoft should add, and I'm happy to say Microsoft had picked up on some of those ideas and has put them into RD Core. But the products, both sides, has been maturing, and more features get added, I'd say, every month. So that's IGEL RDP3. There is no IGEL RDP4. So I thought it might be appropriate to just talk about the Windows Virtual Desktop experience, what exists today, what works, what doesn't work, and so you guys can be familiar with it. So the IGEL Windows Virtual Desktop experience. Today, just a reminder for those, if anybody on this call and in this webinar doesn't know, Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop is Windows 10 multi-session. Okay, multi-session. It's just shared Windows 10. It brings and promises application compatibility. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be able to run an old 32-bit DOS application on here, but anything that runs on Windows 10, written for Windows 10, should work as is without any effort if you install it into Windows Virtual Desktop. It is not RDS, and you probably know that. One of the things about Windows Virtual Desktop, it is only available on Azure. So you can't get Windows Virtual Desktop on AWS, you can't get it on Google Cloud, you can't get it on IBM Cloud. You can run RDS there, but you cannot run Windows Virtual Desktop in Windows 10 multi-session anywhere but Azure. Licenses are included. So basically, you're free to use Windows Virtual Desktop as long as you have the proper licensing, which pretty much everybody does today, if you're tied to any organization. And then, of course, the Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, where Microsoft is making their money, is the fact that they're charging us for our Azure usage. So that being said, what works? All right. So the things I decided back in January that I was going to live in Windows Virtual Desktop. In fact, I'm showing this presentation to you today from, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. This desktop that we're running is running in Azure US East. So what I've learned and what we're hearing from customers is that the Windows Virtual Desktop experience, the connecting to the environment is extremely easy and fast. Making that connection to my desktop is a matter of 10 seconds anymore. I can close my laptop lid, I can go somewhere else, I can open it back up, I'm back into work. I mean, this is the speed, the way Microsoft has knocked down a bunch of hurdles about the time it takes to get connected. You know, we suggested to them that they needed to work on session reliability and automatic reconnects in case sessions would die and things like that. That's a feature that's been added and that works quite elegantly. What we've learned over the years is that a lot of organizations, well, back when we were working in offices, we needed to have access to a proxy and support for outbound proxies to get through a proxy to work with and authenticate against Azure AD and connect to Windows Virtual Desktop, and that's been added. And of course, because we actually just front-ending the Microsoft authentication pieces, and we'll look at that in a minute, we'll talk about that. Any multi-factor authentication that's been implemented, okay, for Azure AD passes and does work with the IGEL device itself, the IGEL client. The other thing we've noticed is user experience, and Doug and I have talked about this quite a bit. You know, back in the early days of Citrix, you know, it wasn't necessarily about having the users work remotely. It was about getting the applications close to the data, because once the application was close to the data, the performance went up a multitude. And this is what we're seeing with Windows Virtual Desktop. Office 365 is a cloud-based application. It is very dependent on OneDrive. And when we're working in our homes or in our offices and we have our Windows and our Office applications running there, the data is on Azure. So you're constantly saving and it works, it just is clunky. Well, when you put it into, when you log into WVD, it is instantaneous. The speed at which you pull up applications or applications are saved or you access your data, it's off the chart. It's so much better than what we've used in the past. Audio in and out is supported today. Local storage access is supported today using a block protocol to get to it. Clipboard between environments is a configurable option that's available today. And smart cards are supported, but smart card technology has challenges with latency and bandwidth, and that's just the nature of smart cards. But it does work if the conditions are just right. So what I wanted to do was maybe for the technical side of things, there are some features with the IGEL Windows Virtual Desktop Client I thought we might want to just talk about a little bit. So one of the things is when you get into the IGEL configuration of the Windows Virtual Desktop session, we have the ability, we've created our own login screen, okay? And by virtue of our own login screen, okay, one of the things that we're able to do is store login credentials locally, and we have the ability to pass those into Azure AD when we're logging into Windows Virtual Desktop. This is a nice feature because it allows people to take an IGEL device and create a kiosk environment where maybe some application, maybe it's a browser or some other application is the only thing that's running. So by creating those credentials, we can create those kinds of kiosks, if you will. So storing those credentials, that's one piece. The other thing is we have this concept of the session launcher. Now, let's see if I can do this here. I'm gonna pull my, well, we'll show it in a minute. The point is, when we make our login connection, okay, what we have is a list of resources that are available to us, okay, so we have, that come from the Azure Resource Manager. So I might have a desktop, I might have an application, I might have two sessions, I might have no sessions, or one session. I might have 20 sessions that I could connect to. The point is the session launcher, they're all available to you, okay? We have the ability through the session launcher to kick off applications in the background or desktops in the background, or move seamlessly from one Azure desktop to another Windows Virtual Desktop, or from a desktop to a different application. And I'll show that to you in a bit. I can't do it because the Zoom sharing interferes with the ability to show that to you specifically, okay? The other thing we've done is we have this in-session toolbar, and the in-session toolbar allows you to leave a full screen application and go launch some other resource that's available to you, or minimize a session. We've added a feature, okay, when you set up an environment for an end user and that end user only has a single session available to them, okay, that session will automatically launch. The user doesn't have to take a step to launch their resource. It'll go all the way through to them. This is something we'd seen with VMware. We thought it was always impressive that they did this. So we suggested to Microsoft that they do something similar, and that is supported. We also have a feature, exit to desktop. When you finish your session, your Windows Virtual Desktop session, you'll return to essentially the resources that are presented in our session launcher. But often people don't, and at that point, the end user is still connected and authenticated to the remoted environment. So a lot of people don't like to do that. So we added a feature called Exit to Desktop. Essentially what happens is when that last Windows Virtual Desktop session dies, that user is then dropped to go back to the IGEL desktop and not back to the session launcher. We've also added a feature of keyboard grabbing. So some of the hotkeys and things that may be reserved on the Linux side. If somebody wants to just let all that pass into the remoted environment, you can turn on this keyboard grabbing. So all of the function keys and hotkeys pass into the Windows environment, and that's an optional setting, okay? We also have keyboard mapping in order to move away from Unicode keyboard codes to the Windows scan codes. For some applications in some countries, this is a requirement, and that's an optional feature as well. And then we have the ability to, through the UMS and through the IGEL setup, to add command line options and front end and be able to configure the sessions, the Azure session feeds, okay, to the IGEL device. So these are all configurable items in IGEL setup and by extension into the UMS, and in the UMS, of course, through a profile. So most of these features you're going to find either in operation. If nobody told you about them and you never stumbled on them, you may not know they exist. Okay, and then we also We have the command line options and the keyboard mapping. These are down in the registry. And again, unless you explore, you won't necessarily find those. Now, moving on. Regarding, one of the questions that's been asked, I'm running this every day. It's really, really good. So somebody asked the question one day, says, well, what's holding us back? Why isn't everybody adopting Windows Virtual Desktop? And more importantly, why isn't everybody adopting IGEL? Well, so I think this is a list of what I think and what I've seen is holding us back. In order to get to Windows Virtual Desktop as a solution for everyone, okay, we need to support devices like webcams and printers. We need to support signature pads and sketching pads like from Wacom. We need to be able to use dictation devices and other USB devices. We need optimizations. We need to be able to do web conferencing. We need to be able to do smart cards and image scanning. And of course, we need seamless applications. That's a debatable item. Microsoft, we want to have this immersive experience. We're using the Microsoft desktop, but we have a lot of people that say, hey, I just want the applications. So this is a piece that's there, but this is a piece that would seem important. Okay. Now, moving on. 2 words, virtual channels. And I bring that up because when we go back and we look at what a virtual channel is, okay, let's talk about, you remember the early days, when the ICA protocol was getting explained to us, okay, and there was this constant use of this drawing, which is still a good drawing of what ICA or RDP or Blast Extreme or PC over IP. I mean, all of these, they're a combination of virtual channels for different functions. Is a great way to think about it. So when we looked at ICA, we looked at these drawings, we look at today what's available. We think about the display and the audio and USB and clipboard and keyboard and mouse, or all these individual virtual channels. Okay, these make up the remote protocol. And each of these virtual channels can be optimized and prioritized. Okay, that's an important piece to remember. So we go back and we look at this, okay, I talk about what's holding us back. Key to every single one of these items that exist here is having support for virtual channels. Now, I can just say virtual channels is the first step. And I could just say, you'll see it probably very, very soon. So I'm testing it here. I'm not using it in this call right now, but yes, I can put all sorts of devices into a Windows Virtual Desktop environment using virtual channels today. So we're working out a few bugs. We have a number of partners working on technologies that will make use of the virtual channels, but it's going to expand the ecosystem tremendously for Microsoft and Windows Virtual Desktop. But virtual channels is the key to supporting webcams and printers and serial devices and smart cards and getting to the point of image scanning and dictation. It's all there. So thought it would be appropriate to kind of talk a little bit about those devices. A lot of them are USB devices. So let's chat briefly about USB workloads. People often say, I want to get access to my webcam through, when do I have USB redirection so I can use my webcam? And all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, no. That's, why do you want a webcam? Well, at the end, what we find is they want a webcam for Teams, or they want a webcam for Zoom. They don't necessarily want a webcam in the remoted environment. So we have a big, long discussion about that. We kind of came back around to the fact that this is a great thing to review. What is USB redirection? So USB redirection is truly the extension cord, okay? It is basically taking that USB cable and running it across the country or across the pond, whatever the case may be. We also have optimizations, and we have what we call optimization type 1, where a USB device, okay, is being controlled, has a driver locally and is optimized for the remote environment. And then we have another type, an optimization type 2, which would be more of an offloading kind of function where the USB device is not really using a virtual channel. It's being used locally, but a virtual channel has to exist for control. So let's do a quick look at each of these. But before that, go back to USB. As you can tell, I mean, this is a review of all the USB technologies today, you know, and we look at USB 1 at 12 megabits, and then we zip up to USB 4 at 40 gigabits. It's rather amazing. If I wanted to USB redirect into Windows Virtual Desktop, I've got to have a pretty good connection, you know, in my office, and be paying Microsoft a lot of money for an equally large connection on the remote environment. So, but the key is, you know, we review this USB and we look at the speeds where people using USB 3 and USB 3.1 and USB 2.0, and understanding that USB connections and the protocols are very much latency and bandwidth sensitive. You can't get a 5 gigabit performance off of a, you know, 500 megabit internet connection. Okay. The other thing is latency is key. I mean, for a USB device to be accessed across the network, we're looking at latencies of 20 milliseconds or less. So it pretty much limits USB redirection to a local area network. Plus the communications protocol itself are different. USB 3 is different than USB 2. USB 2 is more polling. USB 3 is more channel based. Two different web methods. You'll see when you look at Citrix that have generic USB redirection, but that's USB 3 devices that can be generic USB redirected. The choice of USB device is key to your success, okay? And if you're having little devices like a light that turns on or something like that, something that doesn't require constant communication, you know, you could have some success. But this is all about USB redirection, and it's about, I think I went the wrong way, hold on. It's all about devices where you're gonna run that cable across the planet. Okay, a couple of fundamentals around that is going to be the fact that it's very sensitive to latency. Okay, devices are controlled by vendor ID and product ID. It's only for USB devices not covered by virtual channels. Okay, and if you try to redirect USB devices that could also be optimized like a USB storage device, okay, you'll get crazy results and it'll be unstable. Okay. To make what you'll find about USB redirection is devices actually show up, okay, in Device Manager. So I'm sure you've probably seen some of that, or if not, you can go, that's one of the ways to validate whether or not USB redirection is working, okay. The drivers get installed on the VDI desktop, okay, but there are no drivers in IGEL OS because we don't care, because we've just taken and we plugged in the extension cord, okay. The device is in the remoted environment, and any application that can see the device as it exists in Device Manager can use the USB redirected device. If you wanted to set up USB redirection and control that, you know, one of the things we tell people to do is you plug in your USB device, you can open up a terminal on the IGEL device, type in LSUSB, and when you do that, okay, you'll see the list of vendor ID and product IDs, and you can focus in on a specific device that you'd like to reconnect or redirect, okay? In this case, we have a flight controller joystick. We can then go into IGEL setup and we can turn on the USB redirection. And we always recommend that you set up a default rule of deny, because if I enable USB redirection, I set up a default rule of allow, then each and every USB device I plug into an IGEL OS, a device being controlled by IGEL OS, is going to get mapped into the remoted environment. Now, I will say things like keyboard and mouse and say wireless, USB wireless dongles, we actually have settings in place in the inner parts of the IGEL to restrict redirection of those devices if you do put an allow rule in here. But the point is, you have to, we say set deny, and then go ahead and add a device rule by clicking the plus sign. And let's take that device and define that device as a allow rule for the flight controller. This is the best approach that gives you granular control over specific devices. It also keeps end users from going out and buying a different flight controller that you don't support and them trying to use that. So now optimization type 1, this is pretty obvious. This is a situation where I have devices that are remoted okay, that are plugged in locally, so like a webcam or a smart card reader, okay, or a headset. Okay, and what I'm not doing, I'm no longer USB redirecting that device into the remoted environment. The devices are talking to an agent locally, and we see the agent with the little secret agent guy here, okay? On the server side, we have a virtual driver, okay, that's going to respond to that agent. So what will happen is the agent will take the data that's being generated by the cameras or the headsets or the smart card reader, and then it will optimize that and communicate with the driver, the virtual driver, specific for that device or for that agent. This is key to using dictation devices, using pen displays or tablets from Wacom or wherever. It's key for storage devices, webcam, okay, image scanners. All of this is going to basically take a technology that sits on the edge, okay, and optimize it and talk to an agent or a virtual driver on the back end. And that's where we pick up the performance gains. It's bandwidth sensitive, but latency is not as important, okay? Devices will not show up in Device Manager because they're not there. There's a special driver talking to the device. Applications that are aware of that special driver, okay, can talk with those and use those devices that are being directed that way. We need a driver for the USB device on the IGEL OS side, and we need, of course, the agent. In terms of configuring an IGEL device today, if you get inside the IGEL setup, you'll find whether it's Citrix, VMware, Microsoft RDP, you're going to go in and you can activate the various agents, if you will. For example, here's an example of Device Trust or Nuance or Philips Speech Mics. Okay, going in here and activate these is going to activate that agent, and then of course the virtual driver exists on the remoted side. Storage hot plug. You know, in order to access storage devices as block devices, we have to activate the storage hot plug piece. Once we've done that, that virtual channel, that device will get mapped into the remoted environment, and you'll communicate, okay, through a virtual channel designed for storage devices. Then we have what we call optimization type 2. I think this is an important piece here because this is the conferencing and things that people are looking for. In this case, okay, we have an agent on the edge to talk to the devices, but we also have some cooperative processing. So in the case of Zoom or Teams at one point in the future, or Cisco WebEx Teams, okay, or now GoToMeeting. Everybody's using WebRTC to talk point to point. And what optimization type 2 does is say, hey, we're going to have a virtual channel for control, but all that communication is going to be point to point, okay, which is going to give us the best experience. Right now, I'm talking to you with the Zoom client, okay, installed on IGEL OS. So I am using an IGEL device here, and we'll see that in a second. I don't have it offloaded though, because there is no virtual channel support. Well, there is, but we're waiting on client support from Microsoft and Zoom, okay, that will allow me to take advantage of optimization type 2. So, all right. Like optimization type 1, it is bandwidth sensitive, okay? Again, less latency sensitive. Devices don't show up, but the applications work cooperatively. Control is over a virtual channel, and the communications is all local. And then finally, just a quick review, USB redirection, extension cord. Optimization type 1 are devices that have specific drivers and agents on both sides to optimize communication of a particular type of device, whether it's a webcam, an image scanner, Wacom tablet, whatever the case may be. And then optimization type 2, you know, this is kind of like multimedia redirection back in the early Citrix days. Okay, but this is where we see things like Teams and Zoom, okay, where the entire user interface itself occurs in the remoted environment, but the real-time communications occurs locally. So I'll leave you with one last little final word here, and then I'll probe around an IGEL setup real quick. As you look at Microsoft and Windows Virtual Desktop, what are the things we need to watch out for, okay? And in my experience so far, if this is not understood, you know, I won't say it's destined to fail, but you could have issues. Okay. First and foremost, network. I mean, bandwidth is always key. What I find is that my Windows Virtual Desktop session day in and day out is taking anywhere from 2 to 4 megabits per second of bandwidth to have a reasonable session. Okay. If I'm playing videos and 4K video and I'm blowing it up, you know, I can watch that push up to 12 to 14 megabit per second. But that's about all I get. More importantly is latency, because that latency is down around 100 milliseconds, 110 milliseconds. I have a really, really good performance. If it bumps up to 150 to 200 milliseconds, it starts to get a little choppy. So these are two things to be aware of, especially when you send people working at home and they're looking at these things. The other thing to watch out for is service provider outages. I mean, obviously, if your ISP goes down, it's like the old days when the telephone went down or the power went out and nobody could do anything. So, you know, it's going to happen. Earlier this year, Microsoft had an outage on their Azure, on the WVD backplane. Anybody who got disconnected or logged off could not get reconnected to their WVD environment. And that was about 3 hours before that was resolved. You know, it's going to happen. I don't know if it's good, it's bad. I mean, it's a fact of life, but it's not necessarily limited to moving workloads to the cloud, because it happened all the time, you know, as we said, when there's power outages and other stuff. The other thing to be aware of is Microsoft updates. One of the things that we've seen as we work with it every single day now is that Microsoft updates Windows and they update the apps. And, you know, it's great that it's being taken care of, but at least when I did it, or we did it in our own data center, we knew we put an update on there. We knew what updates we put on. You know, I find things sometimes change and I didn't know that there was even an update. So it's something to be aware of, you know. And then application support. I mean, it's Windows 10. Again, applications written for Windows 10 are promised to work, but older applications that only work, that were written for Windows 7 or even older, you know, that's a problem. You know, and this is why we start to see a lot of hybrid environments where we maybe have Citrix or VMware in conjunction with Windows Virtual Desktop as a way to perhaps run some of those applications. And everybody here knows all about testing. So that pretty much takes care of everything. So thanks to that. And what I'm going to do here, just take a quick moment and I'm going to minimize my Windows Virtual Desktop. And now you can see the fact that I am on an IGEL device, okay? And I happen to be shadowing another IGEL device. And I mentioned a few things here. I'm going to go ahead and launch and configure a Windows Virtual Desktop session and talk about some of those pieces I told you about. So I'm going to go ahead and launch setup here. If you want to configure a Windows session, I can go into sessions, okay? I can go to Windows Virtual Desktop. Of course, you could do this with a profile in the UMS, but I'm going to assume for a moment that everybody that's listening knows how to use the UMS, so I'm not going to go through that. But I'm going to click on WVD sessions. I'm going to hit the plus sign to add a session here. And I could call this session whatever I want. I can call it, you know, Azure Desktops maybe. All right, and then I can pick my usual start methods. I'll go ahead and put it in the quick start. I could usually obviously set auto start if I wanted to. And then I can go in here, and then at this point, you know, at this point, it's all I need to do. So if I go ahead and just apply this, okay, I'll have an icon on my desktop. I also have one down here on the quick launch because that's where I put it. And if I launch that, it's going to bring up our launcher. At this point, I've got a little test account here. So I'll go to, and I'll see here. I'll go ahead and launch this. Right now, what we've done is we've passed those credentials into the Azure AD. Great, this is good. It's always good when we actually go do something like this and it fails. Nice. All right, guys. We'll come back and do that again. Let's finish talking about what else is here. So I can store that username and credentials here and pass that automatically into the environment. Okay, so even though I logged in on that screen, I could go ahead and store those credentials here and we'll pass that automatically. We talked about clipboard redirection and drive redirection, okay? A smart card redirection. These are all the pieces that you can configure in here. Remember I talked about exiting. When I log off the last session, do I want to automatically log off of Azure AD? Okay, this is where this exit on last session is closed, is set. And then there's this concept of the in-session toolbar, okay? If I bring this back up, let's see here, if I bring up my IGEL again, and I bring this down a little bit, let's see here, I can probably get to this, hold on. If I come here, you'll see this toolbar pop down. If I pop down here, I've come back around to the session launcher. If I hold my control key down, I can zoom out and I can zoom in, okay? If I wanted to launch something separately, for example, if I wanted to launch, you know, the paint, or maybe I'll go with the spring update. I can right click this and it'll automatically launch this behind the scenes, okay? So even though I have this session running over here, which is our demo, okay? And I've gone through the presentation, so we'll back off the presentation. Okay. And while that's closing, let's go back here. This is logging in. I can click on this. You can see what's going on here. And it's still logging in. I'll go ahead and go back over to this. So you can see how we can move back and forth between these. I'll let those launch up there a little bit while we're talking here. So I go back into this device that I've shadowed. This is this in-session toolbar that you saw there and some of the pieces that are available to you. Okay, if you need to log into Gateway first, that's supported. We have some managed service providers using gateways, and if we have to configure the outbound proxy, is set here. I talked about some of those features inside the registry. If I go in here, okay, and I expand the IGEL registry, I can scroll down here and I can go to sessions, okay? I can scroll down through sessions here. This is, of course, as you know, is all alphabetically listed here. I can scroll down. Here's WinConnect. Remember, I talked about them. I can go down to WVD0. Here's my session here. I can expand this. I can go to options. Okay, and this is where we can start to look at some of the additional codes, okay, to put at after we launch IGEL RDP3. Okay, we can go ahead and go down to grabbing those keyboards if I want to grab the keyboard. Remember, I talked about passing all the hotkeys into the remoted environment. That's configured here. Okay, if I wanted to change my feeds, okay, we have workspace 0, which is going to be your Azure Resource Manager version 2, and then workspace 1 is your Azure Resource Manager legacy. Okay, both are configured here. Generally don't need to change this. Microsoft told us over a year ago that these would never change. Well, then they changed. So we decided to make it a configurable element if somebody ever needed to make a change. So pieces here in the registry goes back to some of those features we talked about earlier on. You also have some logging levels in here that I did not mention. This might be something that we or Microsoft might have you turn on if you want to capture some data. All right, I'll cancel that. And our session here, if I go back here to the top, go back down here. Well, we're having issues. I don't know why Microsoft isn't responding. We're logged in, but I have no desktop yet. So let's not worry about that. That pretty much covers everything. I think we've been, well, exactly 50 minutes, which is what I was supposed to take. So Doug, anything that we need to talk about? Any questions?
Let me come back live. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we do have a few questions, so just a couple. So if anybody has any questions for Jeff relating to this or really anything, I mean, you can ask him anything. Let's ask him some random question. That'll be fun. Let me put on my glasses so I can actually see these questions. And I'll read it. Maybe I should clean my glasses too. Will this be compatible with integrated IGEL smart card readers to be completely mapped to the VDI? because right now native USB redirection, I think he's referring to that, USB redirection with the built-in card reader or an USB smart card device does not work like it was directly attached to the RDP session. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we're talking about, so the smart card, the internal smart card reader, okay, that's in the IGEL is an OmniKey device, strangely enough. And it is actually USB connected, so it's plugged into the USB header inside the IGEL. So if we have USB redirection support, which goes back to the fact that we need virtual channels, okay? If we wanted that smart card reader to be available in the remoted session, we have to first have virtual channel support, which is something that I would say before the end of October, you'll probably see in a release from IGEL. Now that we have the virtual channel support, we would need to take that device and get that device routed into the virtual environment. So one of our partners, Fabulatech, for example, is something that we've been testing and using. And they've got a number of tools, okay, that use dynamic virtual channels for RDP, okay, that we've been testing and work, okay, for remote desktop. So if we want to get access, now we're talking about getting physical access to the USB device, you would need to use some USB redirection tool. But smart cards are different because smart cards generally sit local, okay, and then we have an encryption library that sits between the actual smart card itself, okay, and the remoted environment. And then there's a protocol, okay, that goes from point to point that's used to pass the whatever certificates or whatever data is on the card itself to the remote environment. But what we found in testing, and we've tested this and it works, but smart cards are extremely network sensitive. So I think if the question is, will we be able to route the IGEL smart card reader into the remoted environment, or would we be able to use the smart cards? Yes, the answer is going to be yes. But today it's dicey.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I like that answer. He says nice also. Any other questions, guys? I do have one for you, Jeff, while we're waiting. Can you talk about anything that's, what we should be looking forward to within IGEL and WVD support in the future, near future?
The near future is going to be, we'll introduce the Windows Virtual, we'll be introducing virtual channels, and that's going to open up a lot of options, okay? I know that Zoom has been working on the ability to run Zoom and control Zoom in the remoted session and use the WebRTC pieces locally. In fact, I text quite often with the lead developers at Zoom, who I've gotten to know over the years, and they both have told me that they've got it running off of IGEL OS today. And so they told me I might have something next week. Obviously, it's going to take a while to test it, check it out. But that, I would say perhaps by end of October, we might have the ability to use Zoom in WVD environments and have the WebRTC functions occur locally, which will be quite nice. We also know that we're also working with Microsoft. It's no big secret that, we've been pushing them hard for Teams optimization to basically do the same thing with Teams. And I know that our developers, the key developers working on the WVD client, okay, are talking to and working with the Microsoft developers on what needs to be done for Teams optimization. So we've got some pieces we're working on, and then Microsoft's working on their pieces as well.
Perfect.
That we've been promised kind of Q1 next year. Maybe we have something a little earlier, but Microsoft is very non-committal.
Yeah, of course, makes sense. And then for guys watching, I don't know if you could see the Q&A thing. If you can't, put it in chat and let me know. But if you can't see the previous posted questions, but Ron Nair posted in a nice link to WVD printing workaround profile. So Definitely check that out. He's posted it. Well, there's a link there. So if you can't see it, let me know, because I don't know if you guys have access to the questions. But if you can, then good to go. Any other questions? Let me know. If not, we're going to take just a small little break as we transition over to Christian Bermudez. So give everyone a few minutes as we bring on Christian and start up the next session. Jeff, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that myself. I hope everyone did also. Yeah, Zach says awesome session. So I heard the same thing. Sebastian, I see you.
Yes, I just arrived. Sorry, it was a little bit late because of a customer call, but I saw the last 30 minutes, so I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Do you have any comments on what Jeff presented? Any questions for him?
No, we are all, I guess, waiting for any kind of integration of virtual channels at the moment, or at least it's working on some projects here in Germany. But I'm sure that, yeah, Microsoft, Jeff, Frederick, and all the other awesome guys are doing all they can to have it installed as soon as possible, like on our dev side. So no, for the moment, I'm just keep my finger crossed and waiting for the best.
Yeah, we had Sebastian. I did a Teams meeting last night with my webcam redirected into Windows Virtual Desktop, but there's a memory leak. So you're good for about maybe 45 minutes, or maybe an hour and a half, and then all of a sudden everything dies. So it's the first version. So this is why we're
using the Fabula-Tech stuff, or?
Yeah, using Fabula-Tech, using webcam redirection from Fabula-Tech.
Yeah, Frederick gave me an access to test environment to test it with them better.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it was really good. It was really surprising how good it went. So
it is. It's surprising. And if it weren't for the memory leak, it just becomes unstable, and then you're kind of messed up. But
no call should be longer than 45 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah. But we'll get that ironed out, and then it'll be good. It is very impressive. So, but everybody else who's listening to us, they're going to want to see it. So we'll have to just be quiet. Thank you, everybody.
Just a great job.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Okay, Christian, you there?
I'm here, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Are you ready? We still a little bit above the hour.
We'll give James about 2 more minutes to join. He should be hopping on here shortly.
Okay. My chair is making all sorts of noise.
I was thinking it was your bones, so I'm.
Yeah. I'm gonna be 50 years old soon, guys. I look pretty good for 50 though. Thank you very much. I moisturize. So, yeah, what do I say? What do you guys think of the Jeff session? So let us know. Is this the type of, as I always say, is this the type of content you want to hear? And also, if there's content that you want to hear in the future, let us know. We're planning the November one right now, and like I said, we want to talk about maybe some Citrix optimizations and things of that nature. But maybe there's a different topic that you guys want, or maybe we can schedule that one for December, right? But we're very committed to, and Sebastian sent me over a nice giant list of deep dives that we want to also do in the form of webinars, not just in these meetups. So we're going to continue providing lots of great content. So, right, Sebastian?
I would not say deep, but let's call it dive.
This is deep for me. Okay, I guess. This start button, deep for me. What happened to me? I used to be a technical guy. So now I just organize.
You are still, definitely.
Yeah, I had surprised myself.
Don't fish for compliments.
Yeah. Okay, Christian, was that your bud?
Yeah, James, can you see us?
I can see you guys. Can you see me?
No, we just get a blurry screen right now. There you are.
Hey, there we go.
Hi.
Don't let the 2 names fool you of panelists under my name, but everybody, I want to introduce James Meador. James and I go back 7 years now. Met on a mutual customer site, and then actually ended up working on a larger healthcare organization together. So I thought this would be a good session for us to have. We do have a big amount of customers that are healthcare driven, and this seems to be a big topic of discussion for us internally here at IGEL, as well as our customers out there. And anybody that knows that's dealt with Nuance or Dragon has always had that piece of wanting to rip their hair out a little bit if it doesn't work. It's one of those things when it works great. Awesome when it doesn't work. Time to go find the needle in the haystack of where it's broken. So without further ado, James, do you want to go sort of introduce yourself a little bit and then go from there?
Sure. I'm James Meador. Chris and I have known each other about 7 years, as he said. When we met, we were working on some problems very much like the ones that Jeff talked about with getting devices to a virtual environment. In that case, it was a Power Mic and it was a Zen app, and we were using Dragon Medical Network Edition, which used to be our flagship product, but now we have Dragon Medical One, which is our flagship product in healthcare. And we suffer the same challenges, though. We still have to get the microphone to the virtual instance, whether it's an application or a desktop, and so there are a lot of things that go into that. And I think hopefully this will be beneficial for everybody who has a chance to view. Ultimately, that's our goal, is to try to provide some general guidance on a build so that it can be used by customers.
Awesome. So I'll go to share the screen here, and we'll hop into the presentation. So,
Hey, thank you guys both for doing this for us. And the floor is yours, and I'll keep my mouth shut. But I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you.
cool. So coming on, so Senior Solution Architect, I've been here about a year and 3 months, although it feels about 6 since I've been working with Jeff and Feige and these guys for a while now, from my previous life. Again, we have James Meador. He's the Principal Field Service Engineer for Nuance Communications. So a little bit background of Advanced Services. Now that I know this wasn't here about a year ago. So we basically are a team of, I would say, experts, but trusted advisors that have been around the block a couple of times. So we do offer professional services, technical relationship management, anything that has to do with the IGEL product we'll most likely be able to handle for you guys from a consulting side. James, a little bit about Nuance. I'll let you sort of hop into that one.
Sure. At Nuance, we're reinventing how people connect with technology and each other. Our mission is to develop products that drive positive change in the world. Our technology touches people. Patient care is a big thing for us, but our technology doesn't touch patients directly. It touches the providers who are delivering patient care, but our measures are in patient care.
Cool. So we're going to go into a couple of different topics, mainly around configurations and nuance dictation. So we have about four configurations that we're going to go over. VMware, utilizing single hop, which means IGEL endpoint to a Horizon View standard desktop. Next one's going to be single hop utilizing Zen desktop, and then we'll go ahead and do single hop with Zen app / published desktop / Zen app published app. And then also we'll go ahead and touch the infamous double hop, which is going to be, in our case today, Citrix published desktop from Zen app to a Citrix published app coming from the same environment. So we're going to go through, and then we also have some demos you can watch here. So went ahead and started grabbing some screen captures. This is probably going to go into our knowledge base, and I'll give it to Doug to go and throw it into our documentation for the community, but this is something that I know we've been lacking on our side, so I'm very happy that we've been able to do this. So from a USB redirection configurations, from a view perspective, and working with James and working with some of the engineering that they had on their side, we finally found the solution we need to have in place for the microphone to show up correctly in the VDI session, and we'll go to the demo. So we'll go ahead here, standard just allow, traditional deny on the rule. That's what we like to do to be good EUC engineers. We do have the MMR turned off with RTAB on. One thing you guys will see is I do not do any of the channel mappings. We found that we don't necessarily need to set them anymore. So you guys can go in and bypass that configuration. One thing you do need to do is add a couple of GPO configurations inside of your either ADML template, or if you guys want to try to push it through to registry. So I've added those both here. In this case, we're allowing the PID 0554 or the VID 0554 with a wildcard of the PID. Once we get to that piece, then we'll do the split VID and PID, which will actually have the interfaces, since we know that the Pyro mics have a variety of interfaces. One thing that we did find interesting, or at least I found interesting, is that from the IGEL side, all we're doing is pushing the USB redirection and allowing the virtual desktop to distinguish the interfaces, which I found to be a little bit more, I guess, robust in configuration and work a little bit more consistent. So once we get there, we'll show that the device is actually showing up correctly, which in the years I've been doing this with James, I think this is the first time I truly saw it show up correctly on an IGEL and work 100% of the time I tested it. So that was pretty, sort of made my day yesterday. So we'll see the Power Mic show up here correctly. Once we do that, we launch Dragon Medical 1. We show the microphone show up correctly on the Medical 1 side, which is a big plus for us. For those of you who have been doing Medical 1, you usually will see some type of weird, erratic microphone show up there, and then when that creates a profile, it can create the havoc when you try to get the user to go back to using the regular microphone profile. We'll show here that we just have the application. It is a standalone app. I did put some resource sites somewhere you guys can go grab it. But once we have your GUID for your organization, it's easy to launch and it's ready to go. So without further ado, I'll do the first demo here. Let's see if you guys can hear the audio on it. Can you guys hear the audio on that?
The audio is a little bit faint.
A little faint.
Get a little bit better. A little bit broken up, but
we'll include it in the slide deck that will be built in there.
From a multimedia perspective, we have media redirection off with our tab on. Leave that be. I do have the device here that's ready to configure, so we'll go ahead and launch that session.
There we go. That should work a little bit better now.
I don't hear anything. Should I be hearing something?
Do have Windows 10 running on my virtual desktop. You notice that we have DML on the desktop here. If we look at a quick peek at the devices, we'll see that the Power Mic does show up as a input device and as an output device. If we go to our peer management, apologies, device manager.
And my video stop. There it goes.
Notice that the Power Mic is showing up here in Device Manager correctly as well. If we actually look some more details on it, see if that's working properly. If we go down into the hardware IDs, we'll show that the device is showing up correctly as an audio endpoint. So we'll go ahead and close these out. We'll go ahead and launch Nuance. Notice the microphones correctly. I'll go ahead and launch that.
One thing you guys have noticed is the time in the lower right hand corner. It is a true time of when I recorded this, so apologies on the late recording there.
So we do have a valid session for Nuance thanks to our friends at Nuance. So we'll go ahead and see that our device is up and running. I go ahead and do some of the configuration options here. And my microphone buttons will show you that the microphone is showing up correctly. And we have all the correct settings there. If I go ahead and hit the microphone, open DragonPad. See that dictation there. Highlight all. Hope this is working correctly. Unfortunately, I don't know how to use Nuance 100%, but it is showing up correctly for this demo. We'll give that a go. I'm not a doctor, but that's showing you how we are using Nuance dictation on Horizon View with an IGEL endpoint connecting correctly. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome. So any questions, comments, concerns? Give that a quick break there.
Yeah, I think maybe Chris, one important point there is that so with the split device, right? We're using the optimized channel in order to get the audio from the IGEL endpoint to the VDI, and we're redirecting the HID function on the power mic in order to get that there to the VDI, right?
Yep. Awesome. So that made me really happy. Like I was telling some of the guys on the support team, we finally have something documented for this solution, which is going to be a good thing for our field engineers, some SEs as well. All right, so next one's going to be Cisco Hop with CVAD, good old Zen desktop. So one thing you'll notice here, sort of familiar configuration that we had from Citrix in this one, or for the VMware. We're just going to go ahead and do an allow rule on the power mic. That's going to pass through. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and make sure that the extensions are enabled via our feature sets. So we're going to double check those. I like to double check and make sure they're enabled by default in the profile, just to make sure that they don't have any issues. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and set our Citrix policy. You guys can do this either through Citrix Studio or Active Directory. In my case, I don't have the templates in my AD, so I just send through Citrix Studio. Main three settings, we're going to go ahead and set our USB client redirection. We're going to allow. We'll go ahead and set the power mic to be in the redirection rules, and then the plug and play. These seem to be the three configurations that we have to go ahead and set to make these devices work comfortably. Once we have those set, we'll go over to the VDI session. In this case, we're on desktop, and we'll show that the power mics are showing correctly, which is a good thing, right? One thing you guys will see is that you'll have both HDX audio and the power mic as devices inside of Zen desktop. You'll see a difference when we move over to our Zen app, published desktop, and some of the limitations we have there. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing here. Launch power mic. We'll see that everything's working. And we'll go ahead and do another quick demo of this guy here. Let me know if you guys can hear the audio better on this round.
Alrighty, so we're back with another quick demo. This is going to be for DMO Nuance dictation with Citrix Virtual Applications and Desktop. In this case, Zen Desktop, Windows 10 Desktop. So we'll go ahead and hop into our endpoint here. I will do a quick review of the configurations for USB that we need to have. So we double check our profile here. You'll note that we have a couple of configurations set for USB redirection. Our redirection is going to be allow for the power mic. In this case, we'll deny all as usual, as best practice by our settings. The other piece we'll double check here is make sure that our feature for Nuance is actually enabled and ready to go. With the previous versions of the OS, there was a custom partition that could have been used, and or an older superseded dictation extension that was around. In this case, we're using 1104, so it's working as expected. So we'll go ahead and continue to use that. So we'll go ahead and hop into our image now. I'm going to launch my Citrix desktop. Go ahead and authenticate. I'll go ahead and launch my VDI session here. Go ahead and get there. Awesome, so we're in. We'll go ahead and check a couple things as we did like the last time with Device Manager. Make sure that our microphone is showing up there it is. So happy day. We'll go ahead and check to see that our audio session shows up in when we launch Nuance. In case we launch Nuance here. Also double check that it's showing up in our sound settings. We'll see what they are. Awesome and awesome. That allows you to go ahead and use Citrix HDX audio as well as the Power Mic for this client OS. So we'll go ahead and log into our dictation. One thing that is nice is Dragon, with this release of Dragon, they no longer need the extensions installed on the server or the client OS. It's built into the actual DMO application, so that makes it nice. So we'll go ahead and launch it. Open dictation pad. All right, cool. So we'll have the dictation here. Again, we'll go ahead and say some words. Unfortunately, I don't know how to use DMO as perfect as a physician, but I'll give it my chance or my try here. It is working. Whoopee. Not the best, but it works for me. All right, awesome. So we'll on our way here. So this is good news. So that is the demo here for Citrix Virtual Desktop, then Desktop, using Client OS Windows 10 with the IGEL device, utilizing the extension object or extensions on the IGEL side. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Jeff, I'm not as creative as you doing live demos anymore after doing Disrupt, so I pre-record them now. But rest assured, they were working late last night. James, I did want to take a quick little pause here and sort of go over some of the things around Nuance and some of the things you're seeing around use cases and workflows. Also, caveats you guys have seen. I know what I'm trying to show here is that it works, right? But obviously, you've been in the field enough to understand sort of some of the healthcare struggles they've had. So just wanted to have you share a little bit of that.
Sure. So some of the real world scenario is, every client I visit doesn't have IGELs throughout their enterprise, right? They may have some different endpoints, including some PCs, some Windows endpoints, and providers want to be able to roam their session from endpoint to endpoint, and so they may want to roam their session, and some of the endpoints may have a microphone plugged into them. Some of them may not. But that kind of mobility, wanting to be able to roam the session and where you're roaming your session from and to, all of that matters. It all plays a role. The other thing is, what kind of devices are you trying to redirect, right? If you're trying to redirect a USB speaker, using generic USB redirection, and you're also trying to redirect a power mic using generic USB redirection. The power mic has both a microphone and a speaker, so you'd be redirecting two speakers. That behavior would cause instability and probably the VDI to freeze up. It's a real case scenario. I actually had a client that did that, and one of the things that Jeff brought up was, keeping a device local, and in this case, that's what we did with the USB speaker, and doing that helped us resolve the issue. But each use case with a customer is unique, as you know.
Awesome. Thanks for sort of deep diving there. I know we have seen a pretty much uptick in some of this conversation pieces, right? Especially for the healthcare people going to the hosted versions of their EMR. So this is another reason we want to sort of get this out there and show the value that IGEL can also be on the endpoint versus traditional Windows endpoints. So, all right, so I'll go ahead and hop over back to the single hop now. I don't have a video on this one, so we'll just sort of cruise through the rest of the slide deck here. But just sort of want to show everybody that the configuration so do look very similar, but there is a couple caveats when it comes to server OS. So same thing here. you'll see a lot of these will go. What I may do is, Doug, if you don't mind, I'll probably post these profiles up somewhere. I'll just rip them off my UMS. That way folks can sort of have them if they want to try to fidget with this in their environment, if they have this configuration.
That's great. If you could just send that to me, at the completion of this meetup, I can include it in the show notes of the recorded version.
Yep, and then I'll also shoot you over the slide deck as well.
Please.
All right, so same thing here. Go through the extensions enablement, make sure they're all good. Same profiles. You'll note here that I have a separate USB policy for my Zen app versus my Zen desktop, but essentially they are the same, so no difference there. I just play with a lot of things with Zen desktop over Zen app due to some of the customer stuff I do, but you'll see me do some stuff with DVD writers. You'll see me do a lot of stuff with SANE supported scanners. So if you guys have questions around that stuff too, always reach out to me. I'm pretty knowledgeable on that stuff as well. So we'll show here that we are now connected to Zen app. One thing you'll show here is we no longer have HDX audio. There is sort of a limitation with Server OS and Citrix Workspace application for Linux, which allows us to go ahead and set the configuration for audio, which is going to be this guy right here, USB audio enabled via port ICA. That sort of takes our ability to utilize some of the underlying HDX audio. So that's something I know a lot of our customers have complained about that I'm aware of. Citrix is looking to redesign some of that for Q1 of next year. So I'd be interested to see what comes out from there. But I didn't include the KB on this piece specifically so you guys can read up on it. But it is something that does have to be set when we do have Server OS and also Linux included in the equation, not necessarily IGEL, but Linux as a whole. So this also does make it, if it's in Ubuntu or if it's SUSE or something out there that you guys are using from a different distro, it still happens on that. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that guy. Once we hop in there, we can go and show that the microphone is passing through correctly and logged in and ready to go. Also here, I have this now published as an application. It's running specifically on IGEL. I can go ahead and launch it from there. We'll show that the device is no longer connected to the IGEL. It's actually being redirected correctly to the virtual channel to the published application, and the public application is showing correctly as we need to see the app and the microphone. Now the double hop. I know there's a couple of you guys here on the participation list that come from healthcare. So I know there's a raise of hands of who does some double hop or who's doing some of the hosted EMRs. But I'm sure you guys have seen this configuration come up a little bit more. And I don't know, James, how often you guys are seeing this double hop sort of take precedence now with these hosted EMRs.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the hosted EMR, that is where we see it. So, there are a lot of customers that are Cerner hosted or Epic hosted, or whether it's McKesson or Allscripts. I mean, any number of those, and of course, when they're hosted, that's what we're looking at. The customer wants to utilize an IGEL in their environment, and so. They have a desktop that they can manage. They'll build their own gold image for a clinical virtual desktop, and then they'll connect to a virtual app where the EHR is published with Dragon.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I came from a Meditech world, so I got to see that firsthand as well there. So Meditech Epic were huge for us. So in this case, I'm going to use my first hop because of I guess what I'm seeing more in the field is let's see if I can actually get through my slide deck. There we go. We're seeing a lot of folks still wanting to use the virtual public or the published desktop from Zen app, right? It just makes monetary sense. You're able to put more load, keeps the amount of resources in the back end, and data center is still down. So that's what you guys will have me see configured here. There is no reason you can't use client OS in the first hop. same configurations. We just get a little bit more functionality out of that first hop, like we do traditionally in a client OS. So that's something I would typically recommend if the monetary budget allows it. If not, there are workarounds for that. But continue here with the USB redirection, same thought process, same things are going to go ahead and set. In this case, we're actually turning our Nuance extensions off. We are doing straight raw redirection of the device into the virtual desktop on the first hop, and that's where the primary extensions will be installed. Once they're installed there, that's when the application can actually feed it through and shoot it over to the secondary hop. So that's one big difference between the traditional configuration we have versus this configuration. Same configurations when it comes from Citrix policy. So those will don't really need to be adjusted because traditionally that's all we need to set there. We still need to utilize this beautiful, nice little bridge key since we are using server OS. So that will go ahead and allow us to redirect correctly. What we'll see here is we will need to install the Nuance extensions on the first hop. There is 2 extensions that need to be installed. To show a pretty nifty site from Nuance. It pretty much keeps their stuff all up to date on there. I've always used it probably for the last 5-6 years as a good reference site, pulling down information. Their documentation in there is immaculate for their extensions and their configurations. So that's something I would highly, highly recommend for folks who are wanting to know more about Nuance. Their documentation and their configuration docs are pretty spot on. One thing you'll notice here is one of the configurations or the extensions does need to be installed. Does have a skip OS check that you need to go ahead and run. So I sort of put that out there as a tidbit for folks to take a look at and go from there. But once we dive into it, I know this screen's pretty busy, but I wanted to show a couple things here. One is the application is running from my published app server. Locally on my published desktop, you'll see that the microphone's being redirected correctly there. So I'm coming in from app 03 as a published desktop, but I'm hitting app 01 as a published application. This was pretty cool because I know we've had a couple of customers run into this, and we're seeing it more and more in our wild as we go out and do services. Once it's there, you'll show that it's working correctly, and we have the application hosted. So I went ahead just a connection center so you guys to see that. But yeah, man, it's pretty cool to see all these configurations and settings working correctly as intended, because I know it's been sort of a headache for at least our teams on our side for the last maybe year or so getting some of this stuff working. But yeah, that sort of wraps up my presentation. Any questions, comments, concerns? James, feel free to interject anything, thoughts there as well.
I will say that the roam in a double hop environment is a particular challenge, right? If you kind of consider what happens, you have the device being redirected to a VDI image, so it's got to get there when the user roams, right? From device to device. And then additionally, you have that second hop. So after it's there, the Nuance extensions have to pick up and connect to the published application of Dragon Medical One. And so as you can see, that's where the kind of challenge can come in. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for letting me sort of take some of your time today. I want to sort of jump into this because I know I see it quite often, and I become sort of the SME here at IGEL around dictation and Nuance, so I get pinged on it a lot. But yeah, I would just appreciate the time today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Doug, I know it was short and quick today, but I think the content was pretty spot on today.
That's perfect. That's absolutely
Definitely.
perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I've learned a lot of things regarding Nuance, to be honest. I wasn't expecting such a huge amount of information. It's cool. Really.
Cool deal.
Really nice.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The work I do at midnight is miraculous.
I like
I've always said I get my best work done after midnight.
Yeah.
So I should probably turn on the lights. That's a little bit too late. It's the end of the webinar. If you guys have any, I guess it is midnight for me, right? So if you have any questions before we call this a thing at a meetup, please let me know. post them in the questions piece. You know, otherwise we'll call it a day and let you guys go home a little bit early, which is always nice. And I will go eat dinner. And I think Sebastian, well, it's late for both Seb and I and a bunch of you folks. So Christian, thank you so much. Jeff, thank you so much. Christian number 2 over there.
Mr. Meador, James.
Yeah, James. So thank you so much, and of course, thanks for everyone for joining these meetups. I hope you guys enjoy them as much as I do, and I always learn so much. And yeah, what do I say? It's a lot of fun. Sebastian, any last comments?
No, I appreciate, even if I joined a little bit later, both sessions, to be honest. Even if on the WVD stuff, I'm still expecting the next feature set as soon as possible, but it's just great, just great.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of neat stuff. I tell you, one of the things that's neat about being on the inside of any software company or any company, right, is you sort of get to learn the things that's coming out. And I tell you, there's a lot of neat stuff coming out from IGEL. And as soon as we can talk about it, we will. And then we'll get this stuff in webinars and meetups and what have you. So definitely stay tuned. It's going to be a very exciting winter time. So as we're all hunkered down inside our caves, we can play with all these neat new software and toys that we'll be delivering. So on that note, thank you all for joining. Until next month. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.